What did you try and found out it's not for you? Grew up in a super religious house, so I wasn't allowed to go to nightclubs. Then I moved out and found them super boring and overwhelming. You can't actually have a conversation, and people seem to be acting to look cool and get laid, and it can get super expensive. I tried a sensory deprivation tank because I thought it would be therapeutic, and it devolved into a panic attack. I really tried to ride it out, but after 15 minutes in, I crawled out crying and shivering. Apparently, some of us need to feel connected to our senses to feel real. Also, the salt burned the out of my scalp. Wear a swimming cap if you're going to try it. I had an MRI done on my back. If you've seen an MRI machine, it's basically like a thick donut-shaped thing that goes back really deep. Like if you need your knee MRI'd, just your legs would be in the machine and most of your body would be out, but since it was my back, they had to slide me all the way in. I had never done one before, and before they slid me in there, the nurse hands me a thing to squeeze in case I need help. I literally laughed, and was like, what could go wrong? Right before they slid me in, I asked how long it would take, and the doctor said about 45 minutes. After it started, I swear it felt like a coffin, and it started to get warm and make crazy loud sounds. I couldn't turn my head or body, and when I opened my eyes the thing was like 2 inches from my face. I didn't last 2 minutes and started squeezing the emergency thing like crazy. Nope, get me out of here, sorry. After they let me out, I was like, sorry, I wasn't ready. Let me try again. The second go-around was even shorter than the first, and I noped out of there. So basically, I didn't have a much-needed MRI done that day because of claustrophobia that I never knew I had. I told the doctor that had booked the MRI originally that I couldn't do it, and she convinced me to try one more time on another day and prescribed Valium for that day. I was skeptical, but the time I tried, the Valium worked so well that it felt like I was in a cocoon of wonderfulness, and the 45 minutes somehow flew by, and I didn't want to get out of the machine when it was over. Being a crime scene investigator. I have a bachelor's degree in forensics. I got hired in my dream position at 23, just 2 years after I graduated. This was Plan A, the dream I had been working towards since I decided to go into forensics when I was 16. Then I quit after just 3 months. I wasn't prepared for how intense crime scenes are. One of my supervisors had once told me that we aren't called because someone is having a good day, and she was absolutely right. There are so many players and so many moving parts. I was overwhelmed with what I was expected to know and remember. I could have gotten over that aspect, but the emotional and mental intensity of a scene would paralyze me. Most death investigation crime scenes we were called to were suicides, homicides, and drug overdoses. Almost never had someone died peacefully surrounded by people they loved. It was always violent and lonely. I tended to think about a person's last moments that led up to why we were there, and I would be overcome with emotion. I had panic attacks at multiple scenes. I would always get the work done, but it took such a toll. One day at a burglary scene, I broke down and told my trainer that I don't think I could do this job. She took over the scene while I went to the van and cried on the phone to my mom. I quit the next week. I finished up any open cases I had and threw in the towel. I couldn't do it. It took a long time for me to be okay with that decision. I knew if I stayed that job, it would have killed me. I was praised for realizing early on that this wasn't the job for me and getting out, but I felt like such a failure. I also felt the degree I got from university was now useless, and that I had wasted thousands of dollars for nothing. I'm very lucky to have a supportive circle, who love me and care for me. I wouldn't have made it through this decision without them. It would have eaten me alive. About 1.5 years passed since when I quit, and I still sometimes struggle. I'm in a new position now where I work closely with the crime scene investigators I worked with, and I'm much happier. I spent 5 years doing office work and didn't realize just how much it was taking little pieces of myself in that role. It wasn't hard but was unappreciated and had no real direction. The team completed stuff and somehow I was supposed to feel fulfilled without having any part in the achievement. Instead, I went to electrical lineman school. It was hard on my body, but I managed to stick it out. I graduated and took a groundman position doing real line work. So far, as a career, it's been fulfilling and way more satisfying. The contraceptive implant. I was very naive when I got this one and believed that I would probably not be in the category of those that ended up with the forever period. Sadly, I was wrong, and I bled every damn day from the first few weeks in until about 9 months later. When I had it removed and switched to the combined pill, I never looked back. This should not be used to dissuade people from trying different methods of birth control if they feel up to it. But definitely research the effects and take some time to decide what's right for you. I struggle with scuba diving. I love the water. I've been swimming since I was small. But the part of my brain that says breath said no when I was underwater for any more than 10 minutes while scuba diving. I went out to do my qualification dive, made the swim to the buoy, and on the return trip I left the water and informed my instructor. He was there with another couple for their second checkout dive, and so finished with them, and we all went home. I wish I could have done it. He even told me I had a year to come back and try it again. I drove by his storefront every day on the way from work and was never once tempted to stop in. For me, it's the army life. I joined all excited thinking it would be a lifelong career, and by the time my first enlistment was up I had learned that I really don't like being told what to do. No matter what your rank is, there's always someone there to tell you what to do. I did my time with a smile, and more than 20 years later I still have some great friends, but I have never regretted picking up my discharge and never looking back. Always hated school as a kid. I was gifted so I breezed through it, and now I'm a depressed, burnout college kid. I hate school. I hate college. I learn best on my own at my own pace. Being a landlord, it's a horrible experience. It takes a special type of person for that. I finally started to wise up after a renter's grandma died for the third time, and she had to spend her rent money on an airline ticket. Also, how does a single person end up breaking 2 windows and pulling an entire door frame out in 6 months? Xanax, I thought it would be chill or fun. One evening at home, I figured I could sleep it off if it wasn't for me. I took 1 bar. I didn't feel much coming on for a while. I remember losing feelings of regular joint pains thinking, hey, this is pretty nice actually. That's all I remember of that entire evening. I never had anything affect me like that. Next morning mood was fluctuating like crazy. I destroyed my laptop because I was frustrated by an online community college test. The laptop wasn't worth much, but acting out of anger and breaking something like that was well out of my character. I had an insanely horrible depression all day for no reason. I went to check for the rest of the bars that evening and they're gone. I asked my girlfriend if she moved them, to which she answered, "No, you took them last night." I was so much in disbelief I dug by hand through 2 full-sized bags of trash looking for the baggie. Found it empty. Called my good friend and told him what is going on. He says, "Yes, you called me last night and said you liked them and took the rest." I was standing there still in disbelief. I had no memory of ever making that call. I had no memory of anything after sitting down and feeling slightly warm and comfortable. I have no idea how the night ended or anything in between. I haven't done it since and don't know why anyone would. Working in IT. The work was okay, but the people who work in IT are such a pain. Bunch of arrogant know-it-alls with 0 social skills. Yes, blanket statement, but I stand by it, and don't even get me started on the managers. I came to this conclusion after working for 3 different companies. It was so bad I just couldn't continue doing it, despite the money being good. I'm now working in retail for a small local company. The people are awesome, the work is fun and stress-free. The money is bad, but I'm so much happier. Amusement parks, absolutely nothing enjoyable happens there. I've been dragged to several around the country, and I always end up just keeping an eye on other people's kids to make sure they don't get kidnapped while the parents shovel funnel cake into their mouths and stand in line for hours for rides. Offshore sailing. I took a sailing class in 2010 and then regularly sailed most weekends. I sailed 3 years in Pensacola Bay and another 4 years in San Diego Bay. I absolutely loved it, the skill, the science, the art, being on the water, everything. I earned several qualifications and was renting 30-plus foot sailboats. I started thinking on how I could make a living ferrying sailboats long distance. And then an old buddy, an offshore sailor, asked me to help ferry a used 35-foot sloop he bought in Florida to North Carolina. I accepted. First couple days were okay. It was a bit unnerving being so far out to sea with no land in sight, but it was calm seas and fun to put my skills to the test for days instead of hours. On the second night, at around midnight, just after I headed down for the night, we went from calm seas and winds to fighting for our lives off Cape Hatteras. The boat started breaking. The radio came flying out of the panel, the screw was overheating, and I had to remain below and push a baffle in the engine to keep salt water to cool the screw. I was getting thrown around like crazy. I had to crawl because standing was impossible. My buddy was on the helm, strapped in a harness. It was so loud and rough, We had to scream at the top of our lungs to communicate through the open hatch. We fought that gale for 10 straight, howling, miserable, terrifying hours. When I occasionally looked for my buddy through the open hatch, it was pitch black, and the seas looked like hills behind him. I have never been so exhausted and beat up in my life. My arms were black and blue from getting tossed around violently. We arrived safely in port the following evening. I haven't been sailing since. I will go again if asked to, but I'm strictly an inshore, day, calm seas amateur.